In this video, traders, we're going to look at why we're so concerned about entries and tend to ignore exits. Stick around. Hey guys, warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining me. All right, so we tend to be a lot more concerned as traders with entries. So in this brief video, I want to look and see if that's warranted, if that's something that makes a lot of sense. Now, I've done a video on entries and exits before, and I might have approached this from a different perspective, but I've been thinking about this quite a bit. And my thought is that it very much depends on your position, if you like, in your trading journey. So if you're brand new, if you're an intermediate, or maybe if you're more advanced, however you kind of define yourself. And I'll explain that in a moment. But let's have a look at kind of some of the scenarios and let's really work out whether we should be bothered about exit as much, or whether we should be focused on entries, or whether we should do a bit of both. So let's imagine we have a long position here. The market's double bottomed. We fancy a long. We've taken a long off the low, and there's our stop loss here, right? So let's look at 4 different scenarios and the permutations and how that would affect the trade. So let's start out with the entry being bad. So how bad can an entry be? Well, if we make a bad entry, we could get stopped out. If we make a bad entry, we could end up being too late and having to have a wider stop. So let's just use those 2 scenarios for now. If the entry is bad, then it's just a bad trade and it's not a double bottom and we read it incorrectly, then the consequences are a loss, right? We take a loss. If it's bad as in we still read the trade correctly or the direction correctly, but we're a little bit late to the party, that will skew our risk reward ratio. Why? Because if we're buying here, let's say that was 20 pips, if we're talking about an intraday chart, if we buy 20 pips higher, that stop then has to be 40 pips, assuming the thesis is that, hey, that's our stop loss position is going to be the same, which it really should be for the trade. So there's 2 scenarios there. One's pretty bad because if we're constantly wrong with a trade, we're going to lose money, we're going to be out of the game. The other one's not so bad, but still ultimately it doesn't give us any room for maneuver, because ultimately you have to be right more often to allow for the times when the risk reward ratio is so poor, because all of a sudden we're halving the risk reward ratio, right, assuming the target remains constant. Okay, so that's not very good. Let's consider what happens if our entry is good. If our entry is good, we're correct on the trade, and we've got a reasonable risk reward ratio, the stop loss is a decent position. Now, of course, this is a little bit dynamic, guys. Good and bad is, I'm simplifying it, of course. You know, the best entry will be the low of the day, best exit will be the high of the day. But I'm just kind of putting it in perspective. Good means that, you know, at least if the trade is good as in you've called the direction correctly, you're going to make money. Unless you really fluff up the exit, which we'll talk about in a second, you're going to make money. The market goes up in your favor. Unless you hold it all the way back down to the lows, you're making money. So that's not a bad thing. And also the risk reward ratio is going to be quite strong. It's going to be quite healthy. You know, you've got 20 pips risk and you're looking for a 60 pip target. Decent. All right, so let's have a look at the exit being bad. So how bad can the exit be? Well, I guess the worst case scenario exit is that it comes all the way down and stops you out. So your exit is so poor, you get a good entry, goes in your favor and comes back. But if you assume that that's really the worst case scenario, and most of the time you're going to ratchet your stop up a little bit, and in reality, you could almost blame the entry, because if you're entering, and let's say looking for 60 pips or whatever it may be, and the market doesn't quite get there and rotates back, then really the entry wasn't that good anyway, and the exit does play a part, but the entry probably shouldn't have been taken if it's not extending. So the exit being bad is, worst case scenario is that, but most likely we're looking at a scenario where the exit being bad is, oh, I took it out here, and actual fact, you know, the market went on in my favor, and that was a bad entry. I should have waited a little bit longer. And if you flipped it on its head and said that was your short, well, look at the difference. This is the key point, guys. Look at the difference. If that was your short there, you're stopped out. More than likely, you're going to be stopped out. There's your stop. You went short here, you're out of it. Now, because it's an exit, what are the consequences? The consequences aren't quite as severe. The consequences are that you make 60 pips instead of 100 pips, or whatever the number may be. So is that much of a problem? Well, no, it's not that much of an issue. It's something you could probably work on, because of course, why would you want to leave money on the table if you can improve that? But it's not so detrimental. You can do that all day, every day, taking 60 pips here, 60 pips there, and leaving a lot on the table, and it not be an issue. So if your exit happens to be good and you happen to get the high, of course that makes for the perfect sweet spot. Your entry's good, your exit's good. But we live in the real world, guys. Something's got to give. So which would you prefer? Would you prefer to have an entry that's bad and stops you out? Or would you prefer to have an exit that's bad in inverted commas and makes you less than you should be making? Well, I know which one I prefer, definitely. That's why we look at entries as being so key, because ultimately the exit does matter, of course it does, but it's not as critical to the bottom line. You can have a bad exit and be hitting those and not taking as much off the table, but as long as your entry is making up for that and you're getting good entries into price, you're getting good trades, you're getting winning trades, it can be forgiven. You can be forgiven to getting poor exits. So apart from, of course, if it comes all the way back and stops you out, which is something, you know, probably going to have to work on and say, well, you know, maybe this is something that I can tweak, and maybe I need to look at the whole thing of like holistically. I don't know if you use word, but look at the whole thing holistically. But when I go back to the initial point of the video, guys, is that beginner, intermediate, advanced trader. The beginner trader, I think, should very much focus on their entry. You know, the exit, yes, fine, but don't over beat yourself up for leaving stuff on the table. That's something that can come in the intermediate. An intermediate would say, okay, my entries are okay, but I need to kind of get better at holding the trades longer. I need to get better at finding those winners and holding on to those big winners when they occur. I need to get better at, you know, locating the sweet exit point, or whether I'm scaling out. And an advanced trader is obviously going to do the kind of similar kind of thing, but look at both things together. But I do definitely think, guys, that as a beginner trader, you know, focus on the entry. And yes, people are going to say that exit's just as important, but I tend to disagree slightly, especially in that phase, because if your entry is bad, you don't even get time to exit. You're just going to get stopped out. Now, we've looked at exit here from a perspective of taking profits. Of course, it does also matter where you're putting your stop loss position. That makes a lot of sense. But in reality, if you're wrong on the trade, then the stop is just going to add to the pain. Because if you're wrong on the trade and you're properly wrong, whether you get stopped here or get stopped there is irrelevant. Getting stopped there is obviously better. And obviously if you're kind of sitting with a lot of heat before it's going your favor, then that's an entry issue, because you've got to go back to the point of, well, I need to make sure that my entry is a little bit better. I'm taking a lot of heat. I'm a little bit too early. That's not really an exit issue. That's an entry issue. So focusing on the entry, I think, is a really crucial thing, because if you get good entries, if you get sweet spots, then you can work around that. You like, even if it just pops up 50 ticks on you, 20 ticks, you know, whatever you're trading, you can work around that and say, well, you know, I'm getting quite a good kind of entry on the stretch of the spring. Well, why don't I just kind of scale most of it out and look for a runner? You know, you can really play with it. If you've got good entries, it gives you a good foundation for trading. Good exits is fine, but it's completely useless if you're getting stopped out, because all it's going to do is deplete your account. Now, maybe I've simplified it a bit much in this video, but I kind of wanted to address this because I see people saying, oh, X is just important. But, you know, if you look at the facts, guys, yes, they are agreed when you've got your strategy nailed down and you want to kind of eke more stuff out, improve your bottom line, improve this, improve that. And yes, everything's important in trading, but getting that sweet spot entry, trying to find a place where the supply demand imbalance has shifted, where the momentum is about to continue, whatever that your entry may be, is super important, because without that, you don't have a winning trade. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section below. I know it's gonna basically split opinion. I guarantee it, because it's one of those things. But let me know your thoughts on that. You know, do you work a lot on your exits? Do you work a lot on your entries? Do you believe that one's are more powerful, if you like, than the other? Or do you think that both should be worked on equally? Take care. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.